Rhythm Thief. Hello, Internet. I understand the last couple of episodes have been kind of long, so yeah, I'm gonna try to keep it short this time, because, well, I'm back in my old location, and, well, this time I don't have any guests to worry about, so yeah, I'll try to keep it this short. With that said, let's get started with this week's episode of Romney's Reviews. Now, I don't know all the details about what went on behind the scenes, but I was kind of worried when I saw that this film had 5 writers. As anybody who's into film, or at least has been kind of going to films for a while, can tell you, the more screenwriters a film has, the worse it probably is. Now granted, 2 of the writers only wrote the screen story, with the other 3 writing the screenplay itself, but as they say, too many cooks spoil the broth. Let me be frank, I have not read World War Z, however I have read the Zombie Survival Guide, which World War Z is a follow-up to, so I already can tell you that this film differs from the book, because I know with World War Z and the Zombie Survival Guide, they kind of used more of the Romero zombie as the base, as opposed to the running zombie that's become popular as of late. Now, while the film isn't, like, completely awful, it has its flaws, most notably in the terms of the fact that it has scenes, characters, and plot threads that just don't feel necessary to the overall flow of the story. I mean, there are some characters that if you left them out of the script entirely, the script wouldn't suffer for it. Some scenes could have either been trimmed down, shortened, or just cut out entirely, like the whole opening scene where they're escaping the zombie horde at the beginning of the film. They could have really truncated that and then have the film start when they're already on the US Navy ship thingy, since that's more of the official beginning inciting incident of the story than, well, them fleeing from the zombies. I mean, it at least has some interesting stuff, some interesting ideas, but it's kind of bogged down a bit by the unnecessary fluff. Now, speaking of the opening scene, it also suffers from the case of the shaky cam, which I understand in a suspenseful scene the camera would be shaky, but there's literally a point in the film where they kind of are trying to highlight certain information that the main character, played by Brad Pitt, is analyzing, but everything, the cutting and the shakiness is still too quick, even though in his mind everything's slow and everything. Now, I know there's like a poetic way to do that, but it really would have been a case where use of slow motion would have been appropriate. Now, in later scenes, it's not as bad, mostly because the film, well, feels kind of long and predictable. I mean, once the inciting incident starts and you kind of get really into the meat of the story, it kind of just falls into the pattern of investigation, zombie chase, brief respite, / investigation, then zombie chase. It kind of goes on that pattern for a while. Speaking of the zombies, the effects in this film are pretty good, but some of the more visceral and, well, gory aspects of a zombie film are kind of subdued and avoided mostly. Now, I don't think the film should have been like a complete all-out gore fest like most films, but to put it simply, if your main character's weapon is stuck in a zombie's head as another zombie is charging towards them, you need to show the weapon stuck in the head so that the audience understands what is going on and can actually understand why it's so suspenseful. But in the case of this film, it tried to avoid any and all instances of gore. I understand maybe it was a budgetary thing, or maybe they were trying to keep the ratings down, but come on. It's a zombie film. People are really getting chomped on. This isn't like a minor thing like, oh yeah, they didn't want to be over the top. This is a plot point. This is something that actually happens in the film, and it's just a case of, if you're not going to show it, why have it happen at all? Now, a final thing that I really gotta mention, the music also suffers a bit from what I like to call the Hans Zimmer effect, where, for the most part, the score is okay, but there are times where it gets really intense and really, like, strong and powerful at points where that intensity isn't really warranted. So yeah, overall, the film had some good stuff going for it, but it's bogged down by some of the fluff. There are basically scenes and characters and even plot lines that just felt unnecessary and tacked on. The cinematography is but it's not really helped by the fact that the story also feels kind of long and boring at certain points. The effects are pretty good for the zombies, but the fact that it constantly tries to tiptoe around the gore to make it more marketable really hurts it because, well, it's a zombie film. The film had some interesting ideas going for it, and I did like how it ended and how they figured things out at the end, but it's not worth the $50 mega ticket, and it's most certainly not worth full price. So that said, on my personal scale, I'm giving World War Z a 3 out of 5, which basically places me right here on the emotional reaction scale. I didn't use it last time in the last 2 episodes because I had guests and I had nowhere in the frame to put it, but point being, if you like zombie films, there are much better ones out there, and if you're a fan of the novel, you are probably going to hate it. And if you're just someone like me who's just kind of, okay, I'll check it out, it looks kind of interesting, don't pay full price. Wait for it to go into the dollar theater, see it at a matinee, but don't pay full price for it. It's not worth it. So that's it for this week's episode of Romney's Reviews. As for next week, you'll be getting another set of 2 episodes, with the first episode going up next week being my review of The Lone Ranger, followed by a review of White House Down. See ya then.